Hey, Kris.
Hey, Drew.
Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast?
Why, yes, I have.
When we were trying to get this podcast off the ground, we had a lot of questions. Like, how do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all the apps people like to listen to? How do we make money podcasting? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. And best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now just by reading this ad.
Right now?
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now?
That means if you want to get a podcast going and make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start. Join me and Kris and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. We can't wait to hear your podcast.
What makes you afraid? Some of all fear lives at the crossroads between our greatest phobias and the horror movies we love to experience. Part pop culture and part psychology. It's time to find out why we're all so scared of the dark.
Well, that kind of sucked.
Men. Manly men. Now it's stuck in my head.
Now you're gonna do the 2.5 Men theme?
Yep.
I think you're too far from the microphone again.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I should be good here.
Yeah, because I know last time I was lighter and I was quieter and you were louder, but I think we need to be equidistant.
Equidistant.
We just recorded the whole intro and it got deleted somehow.
Oh, well.
So we just have to do it again,
Yeah.
I guess. So
Practice makes perfect.
So do we repeat all of the random chit chat that we chit chatted? Do we start with new chit chat? I mean, I don't know what to do now. Huh?
Recap
The chit chat?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we talked about how this week has been kicking our ass.
Yeah. Your back hurts. My foot is broken.
Yeah,
derby.
I threw my back out and Kris broke her foot playing roller derby, which is fun. What kind of break was it again?
It's a Jones fracture. It's that little bone, the useless bone on the outside of your foot. And it really doesn't heal well because there's a lack of blood flow there. So I'm excited about this recovery process. I'm very enthusiastic. I get to fly next week to Seattle.
Oh, that's right.
With my fun boot.
That's right. With your boot. That'll be fun.
Priority seating.
Yeah, there you go. You get to board first because you're handicapped.
First, assholes.
You're handy-capable.
Yeah.
I should say.
Maybe they'll drive me around in a little cart or something to my gate.
Yeah. But it sucked, man. You came home and you were like all happy. You had a great practice and nothing. You didn't tell me anything about your
Well, I
injury.
kind of forgotten about it because when it happened, it felt like when you smack your elbow on, a table or something and it hurts so intensely. So I kind of skated off to the side and I was like, ouch, that hurt. And then I was like, okay, like you can go. Nothing is sticking out. You're not bleeding. You're fine. And so I kept skating for, I don't know, at least a good 30 more minutes. Got in the car, was hanging out with Jugs and just, it was fine. It was kind of hurt.
Adrenaline was probably still pumping. So
it was kind of hurting. Like it felt like
you bruised
like you got hit.
Smacked
into. Yeah. Then I got home and I took my shoes off and, same kind of thing. It's kind of rubbing it a little bit before bed and it was, kind of hurting. And then I laid down and
you fell asleep for a while because I was
about
up.
2 hours later.
I'm always up, a couple hours after you fall asleep. So and then you woke up just in total pain.
Yeah, it had swollen and there's just
it sucked. It looked like it really sucked.
There's just not that much room in your foot to swell.
Yeah.
So when it swells, everything is like
hurts.
So tight and it hurts and
so
it was throbbing and you just took such good care of me and finally I took like a bunch of Aleve and a Xanax and just like hoped to and prayed to God to pass out. Yeah. And then I did until the next morning and my swelling was kind of down by then. So we went to the
quick trip to the Rock orthopedic urgent care.
The Rock Express in Reno, highly recommended.
Yeah, actually it's pretty it got in right away. It was nice.
Yeah.
But that sucked. That was a bummer.
That was a bummer.
So we're
going to meet our deductible.
You're all booted
this year,
up,
though.
and you're sauntering around like a pirate.
Yeah, like a literal pirate hooker.
Like a dirty pirate.
Dirty pirate.
Broken
you have
leg
to say it
pirate
like
hooker.
You have to say it like Ron Burgundy.
A dirty pirate hooker. That wasn't a very good Ron Burgundy. Go back to your home on Whore Island.
There you
That's the
go.
second time in a week.
I know.
Or in
I love
two
that.
episodes that we referenced that. So it was the week kicked our ass a little bit. I threw my back out too, so I was all grumpy and
But
and
you threw
shitty
your
all
back
week.
out, and then you were picking up my slack and, taking the kids to all of their first week of baseball practices and hosting it.
It sucks being
and
old, man. It sucks being like an adult
But
and
you-
have to do adulting things.
You powered through it though, and I just keep saying like, thank you so much. Like, just I appreciate it so much.
But my favorite holiday is coming up, so
Yes.
so I'm trying to make sure my back is good, that my
Yeah.
liver is cleansed a little bit.
What about your
because-
soul?
And my soul is right, because we're celebrating St. Pat coming up next
Oh,
week.
man.
I always thought I had a little bit of Irish, but I
You
don't.
don't.
I've done extensive genealogy on both sides, and I'm totally British and German.
I would love to do
Um,
like a 23andMe on you and see how accurate your research is.
Yeah. Oh, I'm pretty certain. I've done a good job on my genealogy, so I think I've and my brother just did it, and he came up mostly. Although we have different dads, but his ancestry on, you could tell that the one side was definitely right.
Right.
With going back to England in like the 1600s. We were early though. We were like first Americans. We're like 10th generation American. Came over in like 1690.
That's insane.
Something like that. So that's kind of cool. The German side didn't come over to like the mid 1800s, but that's still, not too far back.
Not too shabby.
Or pretty far back, I should say. That is a ways back. But in honor of St. Patrick's Day, I'm not drinking any bourbon today. I'm drinking some good Irish whiskey.
Yeah,
So,
you've traded up.
yeah, I normally drink Patty's Irish whiskey is my Irish whiskey of choice. But I was at the store today and I was like, you know what? I haven't tried this proper 12.
Treat yourself.
So and we got
Treat
a
yourself.
podcast coming up, and I'd like to have me a little nip while
What?
we're
You like to
podcasting.
libate?
So I bought Proper 12, which is a triple distilled Irish whiskey.
Ooh.
It's a smooth blend with hints of vanilla, honey, and toasted wood.
You're a smooth blend.
Yeah. So not too bad. I like it. The peaty wood flavor is not my favorite all the time, but it's kind of light enough that I like it. I'm looking forward to getting my St. Patty's on next week, which is my second favorite holiday next to Halloween.
Mhm.
I mean, as far as like, Christmas and Thanksgiving and stuff are fun with family and all that. But as far as holidays that I personally like to celebrate, Halloween and St. Pat's. And I have Halloween month.
Halloween lasts a month.
Yeah. And St. Patty's normally lasts at least 2 days, typically.
Yeah, typically, but it falls on a Sunday.
But I am
and,
starting a week early right here. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, this is just, cracking the tomb open. That's okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna find out what's inside.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I'm ready to let my back heal, let my liver, settle, and just get ready for my St. Patty's weekend.
Wasn't it?
Boys are going to their moms for the weekend. They'll be there, starting on Saturday.
Wasn't it last year that started the whole liver issue on St. Patty's Day? I'm like
I don't have a
99% sure.
liver issue.
You have a liver issue. It is
do not.
fatty.
A fatty liver is my
Fatty,
doctor
fatty,
told me
faux
that,
fatty.
that he's like, everybody has a fatty liver. That's what he told me.
Yeah, everybody that drinks like you.
I don't drink that much.
You don't,
Good
but I
Lord.
mean, your liver thinks you do.
Maybe. It's probably because I don't drink beer. I just drink
Right.
I just drink whiskey.
Yeah, you drink like 40 proof.
Oh man. So welcome, Feardos, to episode 10. We made it to 10.
Tom.
Oh, 10 episodes. That means we've done a thing 10 times.
That's impressive.
I know, it's pretty impressive for us. I mean, we did something that, and we didn't give up on it yet.
No, not yet.
Yeah.
We're not giving up yet. We're still fighting.
People are listening. Our last episode was our fastest growing episode ever by
and that's
far.
really exciting. Thanks, you
by
guys.
far. It was like exploding. I don't know if that was because of the sleepwalkers subject matter or the cat subject matter, or
I don't know, but
or Johnny's pecker.
But reach out to us because we would love to get to know you better.
And speaking of Johnny's pecker, I do have a apology. I do need to apologize to our audience because
you have an amendment from last
I
episode.
do, because I should have known that song
What's wrong with you?
was a David Allan Coe song. I am an old country fan. I consider myself very astute when it comes to country music history.
Pip pip cheerio.
And and old country music. And I should have known that came from the Rodeo Song by David Allan Coe. But what was really cool was I got that answer directly from the director himself,
the man himself,
from Mick Garris, who posted up on our Twitter and gave us and said his brother picked the music and that was an old country song. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I looked it up and I was like, I can't believe I didn't even Google this. Why did I not even Google the lyrics? I could have figured it out in 2 seconds.
Because the Mickle Garrison.
Mickle, it's not Mickle.
I know it's not Mickle. I just
Garrison.
Extended it. I lengthened his name.
I apologize to you, Mr. Garris, sir. For my wife's messing with your name. We have more Mick Garris today too.
Oh yes,
which I'm very excited about as well. I actually really do. I really do love Mick Garris. And by the way, if you haven't listened to his podcast,
he fanned the fuck out.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Postmortem with Mick Garris is his podcast, and he interviews amazing people. He's interviewed John Carpenter. He is such a horror fan and a horror. And such a horror icon too himself, but you can tell his love for other people's work and such a humble guy. I really love his stuff. So
I love that he's tangible.
Yeah. He's very, he's one of those guys that you do feel like, so, when he comments on your Twitter, it's very exciting, but you also feel like you have that kind of, camaraderie with him, even though you've never met him before.
Like
he's
Joe
this
Bob.
Master, so.
That's why I like Joe Bob.
Yeah. Joe Bob Briggs has that too, and he's another one who's has personally responded to some Twitter messages and sent, some messages on Twitter
really admire
directly,
that.
Which is very cool. I think that's people who are accessible, who you can talk to, that you also kind of idolize and fanboy out a little bit on. It's always
we want to be
fun.
like you.
Yeah. So, but yeah, fun week, shitty week, shitty fun week.
It wasn't so bad.
I mean,
could have been worse.
I guess we could have. Yeah, I mean, we could have been hospitalized all week instead of just broken.
Right, exactly. It could have always been worse.
We are talking. We haven't even given our spiel about following us yet, have we?
No.
I was getting there with our welcome to the Sum of All Fear podcast, but we got sidetracked with Johnny's pecker.
Here comes Johnny with a pecker in his hands, and one ball is off to the rodeo. Meow.
Look up the David Allan Coe version. It's great. Listen to the whole song.
Or just listen to our last podcast over and over again.
Avoid David Allan Coe's racist stuff because there's a lot of it. He had some messed up shit. Although he had some great dirty songs. And he had some stuff that I want to say David Allan Coe had some stuff that Shel Silverstein wrote too that was super dirty. I know him and Bobby Bear, but man, and Shel Silverstein had some super dirty country songs that he wrote, which is really funny. But if you're a Feardo and you've been listening to us for a little while, and you're enjoying this podcast, please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Sum of All Fear Pod, on Facebook at Sum of All Fear Podcast. And please, guys, if you've been listening and you like us,
please
show us you like us by rating our podcast. Go to your podcast app and give us a little rating. It's really quick. And
our love language is language.
Our love language is stars.
If you love us, then please put some language on a page and let us know.
All it takes is like 2 sentences. Maybe even one. Just be like, bitchin' podcast.
For 50,
exclamation point.
For 50 cents a month.
Not super shitty.
For
listen
50
sometimes.
cents a month, you too can save a child in Africa that has
in the arms
an
of
ingrown
an angel,
toenail.
Far away.
Finally, you caught on. Thank you.
Sarah McLachlan.
Yep.
Some Sarah McLachlan, just to make sure that, we're not starving any children. Or no puppies here that we're starving.
Puppies.
And no children either. We're not starving children either.
They are not starving.
But that's a different infomercial.
If anything, they eat us out.
That's Sally Struthers. Sally Struthers was the one who did the starving children.
Oh, okay. I was getting it mixed up.
So with that, let's do a little what the fear. What do you think?
Are you ready for this? I don't think you're ready.
I am. I told you I'm having a positive attitude now. So
you are. So
now it's time for everyone's favorite phobia-based trivia game.
What the fear? You say it now.
What the fear?
There you go. Okay, you have to say it like that.
All right, it's time for What the Fear again.
Again.
We just found out that if we have technical difficulties again, like we did in this segment, we have to come up with all new fears.
Well, shit on a shingle.
Not cool.
Not cool, bro.
Kris just had to do all of her what the fear words over again to find new ones because we can't do them over. What we could have, I would have sounded like a genius.
Yeah.
Which
you would have gotten a lot of cred.
I would have gotten a lot of cred, but we can't do that to our listeners. So we are having some serious recording issues. I'm doing everything normal, but then the recording doesn't show up. It makes me very sad.
Technical difficulties, man.
We haven't had this yet. This is our first time we've really had anything just like disappear.
Well, I guess we should be grateful then. First time in 10 episodes.
Yeah, pretty good.
So
let's do this again. I'm excited.
Yay!
I get to have 3 new words, and maybe we'll put the words that you did before up on social media so people can know what the other words that we did in the previous What the Fear segment that
maybe
never got aired.
Guess.
Yeah. So, all right.
Okay.
Let's do some fear, some What the Fear in.
Let's do it.
All right. What's my first word?
Ablutophobia.
Ablutophobia. Ooh, I feel like I've heard of this one before.
Ablutophobic. Phobia. Ablutophobia.
I know I've heard this phobia before. I have no idea what it is off the top of my head, but I know that I've heard this one before. Go ahead and are you going to give me a hint?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's my hint?
You wouldn't want to sit by these people on a plane.
Ablutophobia. Wouldn't want to sit by these people on a plane. People who have ablutophobia?
No. If you had ablutophobia, you wouldn't want, or not, I'm sorry. You wouldn't you wouldn't want to sit by someone who has ablutophobia.
You would not want to sit by somebody who has ablutophobia.
Correct.
Okay. Is that the fear of next to somebody? Wow, it's really snowing outside.
Yeah, it really is.
It just started dumping all of a sudden.
Holy smokes.
Wow. I am so tired of snow.
Winter is here.
I'm procrastinating. Winter is here.
Winter's here.
It's dumping outside all of a sudden. Damn it. It is March 10th. This is ridiculous. For you guys, it's March 12th because that's when this airs.
This is preposterous.
It's March 10th for us. Ablutophobia. You would not want to sit next to this person on a plane. These are people who are afraid of not talking.
That would be like specific to me.
They're just blurting out all the time.
They blurt it
They're
out.
blurting out. Ablurtophobia.
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 Close. That's its close cousin.
That's
is ablurtophobia.
A close cousin. What is ablutophobia?
No, people that have ablutophobia are scared of cleanliness or bathing.
Ooh, I have heard of that one before.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. You would not want to sit next to that person. That's the smelly kid in class.
Well, it is more common in children and also with individuals who experience other sensory issues because the experience of the water on their skin just is really so younger folks and older folks. It's more common for that to happen. Whereas in the middle, that's when it becomes problematic as a fear.
So this is like Pigpen from Charlie Brown.
A little, yeah.
So we have another Charlie Brown reference.
Another Charlie Brown.
So Pigpen has ablutophobia. Not a fan of taking a bath.
No. And we love him just the same.
That reminds me of Deadwood. You remember Calamity Jane?
Yes.
Wasn't it Calamity Jane that they were like, you got to take a bath?
Yeah.
And wrestled her into the bathtub?
Yeah, ablutophobes would do well in old times because it was more, widely accepted to not bathe.
To smell.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be smelly and dirty. I like it. I do not have ablutophobia.
No.
I like to shower like twice a day. I'm a big fan.
You're squeaky.
Big fan of cleanliness.
You are squeaky clean, Shattuck.
I try to be most of the time.
Okay, your second one is chorophobia.
Chorophobia. Oh, we had a little girl on our baseball team named Cora. I'm not afraid of her at all. She's very nice.
CHORO phobia. Chorophobia.
Chorophobia. CHORO? Chorophobia.
Your hint is you would never find them in the club.
Ooh. Chorophobia. They wouldn't be in the club. They are afraid of loud music.
Ooh, close.
Am I close?
Close.
I was thinking like chorus, Cora.
Would you like a second level hint?
Sure.
For no point?
Sure.
Okay. Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing. They are afraid of rubbing against people.
Close. I kind of gave it away. They're afraid of dancing.
Oh, they're just afraid of dancing.
Yeah.
You said the answer.
I didn't realize
in
that
the hint.
until I said it, and then I was like, "Damn it!"
You said the answer in the hint.
I did, and you still didn't
I
get
still
it.
got it wrong.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That's all right.
It's okay. It's new positive Drew.
New positive Drew.
Positive Drew is okay with getting things wrong because I'm human.
New Drew.
And to err is human.
To err is human.
Right?
And can you also be wrong? New
I have
Drew?
nothing to fear but fear itself. That's what FDR said.
Can you also?
I have nothing to fear but what the fear itself.
We have nothing to fear but what the fear itself.
I'm pretty sure that's what the original text of his speech said, and then he edited it.
I need that on a coffee mug.
What the fear itself.
What the fear itself. Okay.
All right. So that's I'm over 2, but that's okay. I was, it's kind of fun getting in the ballpark.
Yeah.
With these hints.
You're getting really close.
At least we're somewhere in the realm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, all I have to do is just like spell it out for you next time and you might get it right.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the fear of putting baby in the corner.
No one puts baby in the corner.
Yeah. We don't put baby in the corner. The fear of corners could have been.
It was literally the fear of dancing.
Yeah, the fear of dancing. The fear of Patrick Swayze.
It was
in tight t-shirts.
Yeah. It's more so the fear of being in a crowd of people dancing and kind of like not being able to escape kind of feeling.
Interesting. So it's got a little bit of the crowded places.
Right, a little bit, but it's specifically in dancing scenarios. So It's like leveled down even further.
Gotcha.
Okay, so your third one is katagelophobia.
Ooh, spell that for me.
Kata Gelo.
Kata
Gelophobia.
Gelophobia or gelophobia?
Katagelophobia. What? I don't know.
Katagelophobia.
I was thinking Greek, kind of in, I don't know.
Yeah, katagelophobia. That sounds right. Gelo.
Yeah.
Katagelophobia. All right. That is.
You don't want your hint?
Yeah. I keep trying to answer before you give me hints.
I know. You're eager.
I'm very eager.
Beaver.
I'm just so excited. I get so excited.
You're so eager, Beaver, New Drew.
I know. This is New Drew. New Drew is excited to answer.
You're excited to answer, and you're okay with being wrong.
That's right. I am okay with being wrong. Yeah. I have come to grips with it. Luckily, I live with a therapist, and she has talked me through all of my failure, and have given me she's given me a new insight into my own mind.
You're giving me far too much credit.
Yeah.
Give me like another 20 years of marriage and we might be there.
Might be there. Hey, if you want to be happy for the rest of your life, make a therapist your wife.
Oh, hey there. I like that. Mm-hmm. I see another bumper sticker.
A sexy therapist.
Oh, shit.
Make a sexy therapist your wife.
Oh, you're making me blush. You're avoiding the fact that you don't know what katagelophobia.
I need a hint. You haven't given me my hint yet.
That's right. Okay.
Katagelophobia.
Okay. People often suffer from a little bit of katagelophobia when they're expanding their current role or growing into a new position or being vulnerable.
Ooh. Katagelophobia.
Katagelophobia.
The fear of responsibility or added responsibility?
No. What happens when you get added responsibility? What are you most afraid of?
Failure.
Right, but kind of what would the uppers think of you?
The fear of scrutiny, like judgment?
Ridicule.
The
fear of ridicule.
Interesting.
Yeah, the fear of ridicule.
Huh.
So
that makes sense.
It comes from the Greek kata or something, katos for put down and jalo for laughing.
Huh.
So it's the fear of ridicule.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I would have probably gone more.
You want
like
the cool kids to be more cool kids.
Yeah, I would like the cool. Yeah, I would have gone more the high school route with that hint, but that's okay. That's okay.
You want to be like the cool kids and you want them to like you.
Yeah, I mean, you can work on your hints. That's okay.
I can. Well, it was my 6th hint of the day. So, and I did come up with it in 2.5 seconds.
It's true. Yeah. The fact that we had to wholly re-record the What the Fear
both
section.
segments,
and we haven't even found out if this one's going to save yet or not. So
both segments.
Who knows?
This podcast we've re-recorded.
We have both segments. We have done each segment twice. Already.
And I don't know if they're better or
we're
worse.
nailing this shit. I mean,
Are we?
I don't know. I mean,
are we nailing it?
We get to do them over again, so they don't sound. They're tighter, right?
Right.
They're tighter.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait.
Tighter.
What?
They're tighter.
If you do it over again, it's tighter. That doesn't make sense.
I think so. Yeah, because you get.
It's not how it works.
You don't ramble as much like we're doing right now.
See, exactly.
Did we even introduce our phobia for today? Which is a really interesting one, and one that I think is going to. Is it going to drum up? It may drum up controversy. It might drum up some interesting perspectives from a male and female perspective. Because today we are doing androphobia.
Oh.
Androphobia, which is the fear of men.
It's a good one.
So we are going to dive into that. I wanted It's Raining Men to be our transition, which maybe I'll stick that in there somewhere. I don't know.
Can't be men.
There is a manly men component of it too, of this phobia.
Yes.
A little bit of fear of manly men as well. We'll get into that in a second. So our phobia for today, guys, is androphobia. All right, androphobia, the fear of men. Quick definition: an abnormal and persistent fear of men. Sufferers experience anxiety even though they may realize they face no real threat. Mm-hmm. Etymology, pretty easy. Andros, which means men in Greek. Tell us about this fear. We had a really interesting time with this one this week. There's so many nuances to this, right?
There's a lot of layers.
There's so many things we could dive into, and there's a lot of gender debate and political stuff and all that kind of stuff. But I think we're going to steer a little bit away from some of that, maybe dig into a little bit of it, but not get too. We don't want to get too tied up in some of the modern socio-political details. But
right.
I think we'll touch on some things. But I'm really interested to see all of your research, because I know you've been researching it a bunch this week. I
have. I've been diving really deep. And the one thing I want to point out first is that there's a big difference between androphobia and misandry, which is the hatred of men. So
misandry is the hatred of men.
Misandry is the hatred of men. And our phobia is the fear of men. And it's an irrational fear. And folks that experience it often know it's irrational, and yet they still experience that fear response. So I want to point that big difference out. It's not, intentional. It's not hatred of, it can appear in that form, but there's a very big difference between misandry and what we're going to go over today. So just noodle on that for a little bit.
That's a really good distinction. I think that's a really great place to kind of get that foundation of because I think you could definitely confuse the two of those, and you see those kind of things playing out in different ways.
Well, hatred is very intentional, whereas fear is often less controllable.
Sure.
Like we don't want to experience that fear. We might hate experiencing it, and it might come across as hate, but really deep down it might be fear.
Sure.
So there's a big difference. And with this phobia level fear, it's irrational, it's inflated, can't control it. There's two differences between how it manifests in children and how it manifests in adults. In children, it will often be reflected as tantrums, crying, clinging, refusal to approach or leave a female side and go to a male.
A mother figure or a female figure.
Like just female in general. And we know that that's often experienced, or that's often expressed because of negative experiences with men or learned behaviors about men. Social learning, kids are most at risk for this phobia. They see a lot of things that their parents are doing.
Sure.
And they have a lot of negative events happen to them themselves. So very common traumatic phobia can be passed down to, just kind of like the other phobias. But more often than not, we see a lot of trauma.
So abuse, things that happen in childhood that trigger these things, which,
Right.
we've talked about with some of the other phobias, but I can see that being something that would be especially true of this phobia.
Right. Like if you watched your mother get beaten, or maybe she had an abusive relationship before and she herself had a hatred or a fear of men, I should say, that fear can definitely translate into different generations just because you learn and you are what you experience. And if your mom shows you that men are not safe, mom knows best.
Well, and that's something that I think, being raised in the generation that we did, and probably even subsequent generations and previous generations probably too, women are kind of raised with that look over your shoulder, be
Sure.
careful. You don't know what's going to happen. Check in the back seat of your car, right?
Be hyper vigilant. Always lock your doors if you're home alone. Never cross a parking lot alone. All these various things that I know for me personally, came at me when I was growing up. But also too, just from hearing other people talk about their behaviors versus their spouse's behaviors in the same scenario. Like Drew and I were talking about, what do you think about when you go to the car? Like in a
right. Yeah. If
grocery
you're
store?
at the grocery store at night and you're walking out into an empty parking lot, what do you think about? And my response was, I think about going to my car and getting in my car,
just walking in my car,
getting in my car and going home.
Whereas before I go out into the parking lot, it was taught to me and I learned it through watching other people and watching television and making internal assumptions about my own safety around people, specifically men usually, but around people in general, and to be hyper vigilant because of my female status specifically.
So when you walk out into that parking lot, what do you do?
I stick my keys between my fingers and I scan the entire area. And then I also look around me. Before I get into my car, I look into my back seat. I was raised in the generation of like Rescue 911 and Unsolved Mysteries and, all those fun shows where nothing is safe. And I don't inherently feel unsafe, but I am cautious. I'm hyper vigilant.
Do you think that that thing that's ingrained in young girls growing up is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it neutral? Is it, does it cause women to have an extreme fear that shouldn't be there? It should be balanced. Like what? Because I always think of like stranger danger, right?
Right.
We talked about that a little bit. Stranger danger was something that was taught in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was kind of harmful because strangers weren't the ones you should be worried about.
It was the people that you knew or the people that were close to you
right,
and your
the people
family.
that were close to you and your family. So stranger danger was kind of gave a wrong impression that you're always going to be kidnapped or,
by this strange
by
person.
some stranger.
But
right?
forgot to mention then a large portion of abductions or assaults or rapes or, whatever you want to call it, sexual assaults occur with people that are familiar.
Right.
With
Friends
the
and
victim.
family.
Friends and family.
Right. And similarly with women, with women who are raped or things that happen to women, these traumatic experiences, likewise, many times boyfriends, friends, somebody they know, things like that.
There's a fear response that, honestly, we can all understand that response. If you get, beaten and raped by a group of guys and left for dead, I understand why you're afraid to be around a group of men. That makes sense to me.
Sure.
That horrible thing has happened to you. But when it gets to the point where it impacts your ability to live your everyday life and it becomes phobic level to where hearing a male voice, seeing a male figure on TV makes you uneasy, that to me is not something that can be ignored. That's really, really deep stuff. And those folks really need to seek treatment. And there's a lot of treatment options, including neuro-linguistic programming, which is kind of like the rewiring of how we think about things and how we use words when we talk about things to kind of take our power back and take our ability to be able to process through these things back in a safe environment, you know. But it's if you have this phobia, it's pervasive. Like,
do you think all women have a sliver of this kind of ingrained in them?
I mean, when I personally look around, I see a lot of cultural indicators in our culture and other cultures that men are dominant, men are aggressive, men are the protectors because they are bigger, or, you know, whatever that culture thinks. Not that women are not important, but just that these roles are often assigned to men, either spoken or unspoken.
Well, and there is that element of kind of that toxic masculinity too, that you know, that's kind of a buzzword right now, but there's that element of, you know, I always feel like when these things come up in culture, you get the one extremes on one side and the other extremes that just pull farther and farther apart. Right. So there's the one side that's like, well, men need to be men, and, you know, men need to be men, and anything that challenges me, like challenges my masculinity. You know, and then you see the douchebag frat boys that kind of ingrain this kind of thing. And then there's sexual assault. So there's all these things that happen that kind of influence that, you know, and the Me Too stuff and all these things that kind of trigger these things. And then we see both sides kind of going farther and farther apart.
Right. And missing the point entirely, you know, that they were trying to get at, was that the point is that I don't feel safe. You know, I don't feel safe. What can we do about it is the point of all those conversations, but it's not being heard by the other party because of how it's being expressed.
Sure. I don't feel safe in my workplace. I don't feel safe in my school.
And it may not be because of you, because you're a male. It may be because of something inside of me, something that happened, something, you know, traumatic that's very painful. And it doesn't make it, you know, your responsibility to not be male or to not be around me because I'm afraid of it. It makes a shared responsibility for me to communicate with you that this is a thing and that I'm working on it, you know, because I see that it's illogical, or I see that that there's other evidence aside from my fear-based, you know, brain. There's some facts that show me that not all men should be worthy of that kind of fear, because definitely some should, right? We don't want to go always or never with these things, because that's how we get into these huge arguments. We want to truly understand what's at the heart of this fear, and the heart of that fear is a feeling of not feeling safe. Now, whether or not it's because you're a woman, or whether or not it's because you're physically smaller in stature, and
that's another thing to bring up too. This androphobia is not gender exclusive.
No, it's not.
It crosses gender boundaries. There are many men who have androphobia. They have struggle because it can be actually sometimes it's even defined as the fear of masculine men, or the fear of masculinity. So men who say, for example, I think it's kind of interesting because I didn't grow up, but I went to college in a very academic environment, a lot of academics. Right. You know, and there was a few meathead guys, but it wasn't like a normal university situation where you've got like your jocks and your
football players,
much more academic focused. And there's definitely, I think, in a certain segment of the male population, there's kind of that fear of manly men, right? Like guys who are, you know,
the atypical, or the stereotypical, not atypical, the stereotypical masculine male.
The carpenters, the construction workers, the plumbers.
But not all of them always, you know, it's just the ones that are typified into that, you know, selection.
And there's a sense of inferiority. There's a sense of like, of not, you know, it's interesting when you see, you know, you hear about like sexual assault happening and things like that, and there's men standing by that don't do anything. Sometimes that's because that alpha male is unchallenged, right? There's people who don't want to. There's men who don't feel like they can step up, and I've felt that myself. You know, I don't feel like I'm a super, you know, passive man necessarily, or beta man or whatever. But I also have, you know, I don't do a lot of trades with my hands. I don't do a lot of, you know, so there's always that little bit of inferiority complex when you can't pull apart an engine.
Right.
You know, and so it's kind of interesting to see that this phobia kind of can cross those boundaries too.
It does. And it's really interesting. I wonder if a male suffering from androphobia would also have the same physical fears that many females have, you know, on a regular basis, that what happens if he overpowers me?
Right.
Could I be overpowered here and taken advantage of?
Sure, probably avoiding certain situations, avoiding certain
Mm-hmm.
places, things like that, I'm sure. But it's, not to get off too much
Right.
on that tangent, because it is definitely predominantly female
and predominantly seen in children. So, not trying to be sexist. It's just numbers are numbers. This is what's
well, and the
out there.
children thing, I think probably is probably more diagnosed with children or seen
Right.
in, but there's no doubt that it's pervasive
Mm-hmm.
among females. I mean, I'm sure there is that little bit of sliver of fear because of what's something that's happened, situations that's happened to you, things that's happened, things that happened to you in high school or in college.
Secondary traumatization, things that I've heard of my friends going through that make me hyper aware in certain situations because that's what happened with her,
Right.
Or that's what I saw on television. So pop culture, horror movies, all these things play into that fear because most of us have that a little bit in ourselves, kind of naturally. There's vastly different ways that women and men think too. Biologically, the brain is different in men than it is in women, in 3 primary ways. So in the way that the brain processes information, men have more gray matter, which is kind of localized, hotspot information. They're kind of like the action centers of information, but they're localized. So they're not all in one spot. They don't cover all one spot. They're more hyper focused. Whereas women have utilized on average 10 times more white matter, which is kind of like the layer of communication and processes, like the network grid that connects everything together. So inherently, those brains process information better on a multitasking basis. They can process multiple things at once pretty well. Whereas the male brain tends to be more laser focused. Like that's biology.
Sure.
It occurs in the womb during the development of the brain, and how different brain chemicals from the mother are released and grow in the child and help to grow and facilitate the growth of the brain. We look at like neurotransmitters, same chemicals get dumped into all of our brains as humans, same chemicals, completely different processing.
So we process them completely different.
And
that's just a biological reality.
That's just
one of those things.
Biology, that's the brain processes things differently. Could a male process things a little bit more like a female? Sure.
There's going to be exceptions.
There's going to be variations because nothing exists. It's all going to exist on a bell curve. More than likely. I don't know if that's true or not, but
well, it may not be put that way, but things are on a scale. There's going to be a scale of, and some people, they're going to utilize more of one side of the brain or one type, one part of the brain.
Like men tend to have more testosterone. That's just what your body produces. That's just what your body picks up. But your body also doesn't, or not your body, your brain also doesn't pick up oxytocin as well as the female brain does. And oxytocin is the closeness hormone, the cuddle hormone, the bonding hormone. So you produce it, but your brain doesn't pick it up like a woman's brain does. And what does that help with in terms of women? Well, it helps with bonding and childbirth.
Maternal instinct and those kind of things.
And maternal instinct and child rearing. And,
and again, there's gradations.
There's gradations.
Every person's an individual.
Always.
They have different, they're going to be more or less on these scales, but by and large, biologically, those are just realities.
Right. And then if we're going structurally, the left hemisphere tends to be man's verbal center. So they tend to operate generally from that left hemisphere verbal center, whereas women have verbal centers on both hemispheres of the brain, which makes them much better communicators generally. And a larger hippocampus helps with memory. So they retain specifically emotional memories much longer than men because of this enlarged hippocampus. And also they retain memories specific to the 5 senses better than men's brains generally do.
Well, and they're going to retain a negative experience much better than a positive experience.
Yeah,
so if you have 50 positive experiences and one negative experience, that negative experience is going to overpower.
Yeah.
Right? Is that correct?
Yeah, we were listening to John Gottman on a podcast earlier this week, and he was talking about the number of negative interactions versus positive interactions that are kind of required to maintain harmony in any relationship, not just a marriage. And that ratio is at least 5 positives to 1. And that's really important. The best ones are 20 to 1.
Interesting.
So that's 20 positives.
So relate that to our fear of men. How would that kind of relate to this topic? Like if somebody had with men, most people are interacting with men on a daily basis, obviously, wherever, at the grocery store, at restaurants, whatever. But if they have one bad experience with a boyfriend or one bad experience with a male supervisor or whatever it might be, right? That's the thing that's going to
it can confirm their fear. It can confirm their bias. It can confirm what they really, really want to be true. And I did a little...
So it's confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias, yeah. I did a little internet research, and I found a Whisper article on androphobia. And if you guys don't know, Whisper is a website that is available for people to basically just kind of dish their guts and tell their secrets without any fear of backlash.
It's anonymous.
It's anonymous, totally anonymous. I don't know how they do it. It's anonymous. But I found this article on androphobia. And so here's a few examples from folks who have submitted to Whisper who experience androphobia differently and how they experience it differently. So I'll kind of let them tell you what their experience has been like. So this first one, I have androphobia. I'm afraid so much I can't be touched or alone with someone male. I'm so terrified of men, just hearing one say my name makes me panic. I'm terrified of men, even when they just walk past me. I get really nervous. My mother's failed marriages have made me terrified of men. I was sexually abused from when I can remember up to 12 years of age. Sex education saved me. The incident made me meek and timid. I am still apprehensive and terrified of men. My schizophrenia has given me fake memories that have made me terrified of men, especially ones I know I can't take in a fight.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's schizophrenia. So they weren't actually experiences that she had. But
it was a he.
Interesting. Oh, it was a he.
It was a he. That was a male's experience of androphobia. He was experiencing schizophrenic hallucinations associated with having a fight with a man who was physically
overpowered him.
More imposing than him.
It's interesting. We have had many friends and we've had many experiences, and you've had experiences, and we've known, almost every woman that we know in our lives has had some experience, right? It's pretty universal to have an experience with a man who has been either abusive or sexually, aggressive or sexually abusive or a rapist or, any one of those number of things. It's not hard to understand how that would frame your view,
your perception of
everything around you. You can't get away from men. They're all over the place. How do you treat, like you were talking about treating that, because there is an element of irrationality to it on an extreme level, right? It's happened. It's something that has happened to you. You've had an experience. How do you get past that experience to live without that fear all the time? And also, but at the same time, being cautious too, right? I mean, being cautious and aware of your surroundings and understanding that there are creeps out there, and there are crazy people, and there are people who are predators, right?
Because you're not wrong.
And there's people who are predators who could be friends, who could be, acquaintances, who could be relatives, whatever.
Friends of friends.
So how do you get past that? What's the
So we were talking about the idea of a safe space. That's used a lot in dialectical behavioral therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, which are both very, they're different and they borrow from each other. Well, DBT kind of borrows from CBT, but I won't get into the particulars and get all nerdy on that. But basically, what's driving at the heart of it is reframing how you think about things, which helps how you behave around things. And one of the features of this is being able to use your language to redefine your world.
Now, this is safe space within a therapeutic context.
Right.
So it's important to define that as different than what is being used in a pop culture,
so
in a popular college setting type safe space, which confuses it very, very.
Before any trauma work is done, before any like deep dives into psyche and history and all that kind of stuff, therapists first lay the foundation for a safe space, a spot that the client can retreat to. They practice retreating to. It's a space inside of themselves that they identify with words to help cement it into various parts of their brain as new pathways. And they continually practice how to get into this safe space and to kind of calm themselves down when feeling anxious or fearful in a safe setting where they know I'm in my therapist room. There's no men here. I'm safe. This is a good place to practice this. And it's also a good place to kind of dive a little bit deeper into some of those things that might be a little bit harder and practice the utilization of that safe space in real time when you need it. The reason for that is safe space, and the word safe space has been like abused and drug around lately because everything has to be a safe space, but not everything has to be a safe space. Is if you have a safe space,
it's not supposed to be used for just something that offends me or upsets me.
No, the safe space really needs to be within you so that you, when you feel threatened, when you feel unsafe, when you feel anxious, so that you can go to that place and you can make rational decisions from that place,
so that you can deal with somebody on the out, somebody who maybe triggers you in some way.
Right.
You're dealing with it internally. It's not something that somebody else that somebody else has to cater to. It's something that you build inside of yourself.
Right. And that's because that's a long-lasting tool. We can't shape everyone around us. We have to first go within and shape ourselves and give ourselves a place to feel safe within us. And then we can truly get at the heart of the fear and really treat it and work on reframing it and work on, what areas of my life is this affecting? Well, let's think about if I wanted a child, that affects things. What if I have a male child? How is that going to affect my fear? Or
how you raise that child.
Or how I raise that child. Or, because there are ways to get pregnant without, a direct man involvement.
Sure.
But what if you're androphobic and you have that male baby? What now? So gaining those skills to be able to work through those experiences from a place of safety within yourself, knowing that logically, this is a child, this is going to be my child, blah, blah, blah. Really laying that foundation so that your lizard, anxiety, fearful brain doesn't take over and send you into panic mode. So that's truly what goes on in the treatment behind a lot of these phobias.
Makes sense.
That safe space is within. It's not external. It's within. And if it is external, that would be a priority that a therapist would treat first. They always treat safety first. Are you safe? Is a child or an elderly person that going through any sort of physical, emotional, verbal abuse or neglect? Okay. You guys if you're safe, now we can work on this next level. We can deal with
it. We can actually address it.
Right. But unless you feel safe in your environment.
And I think there's a lot of women, probably listening who can relate to this phobia.
Sure.
I guarantee there are a lot of men in the homosexual community, the LGBTQ community that can relate to this phobia,
who may have been abused by men.
Sure.
Previously.
Or been
and they may not be at the phobic level, but in some way,
sure,
the presence of men does affect them. So,
absolutely,
it's on that spectrum.
And I think if you were speaking to them right now, if you gave them, this would be my first step, what would you tell them? Other than just seek help, but what kind of things would you reach out to?
I mean, first I would ask if it's something that they really want help with, because it's okay if they don't,
Sure.
like it's not my imperative to force somebody to do or not do anything as a therapist. It's my imperative to be like the GPS
Well, let's
system.
assume they want help. Let's assume that they're looking to kind of get past this as a general, because it's a very general, thing.
Sure.
That they've taken specific situations or specific phobias and they've created something that's now that's affecting their life on a much broader level.
Mm-hmm. I would say find a therapist that can help assess you really well, and see if they can refer you to some sort of a specialist, maybe, depending upon the root of that fear. It might be them. It might be someone who specializes in trauma therapy, who really knows how to get you to that safe space, depending upon where the fear comes from. But please just go see someone and ask for, a thorough biopsychosocial assessment. See what comes up for you, and you can always shop around for therapists and see who fits best.
That's really amazing information, and I'm really thank you for researching. Spending so much time researching this one this week, because we kind of went back and forth on whether to do this one or not, because it's kind
it hits home with
a lot of people, which is why we did it. We think it's important, right?
It's important to think about how and why and where our assumptions or beliefs about anything come from, because then that drives our behavior,
drives everything. And in culture, there's so much talk about this Me Too, and there's all these various things that are going on in culture all the time that are influenced by our experiences with the opposite gender, or
right.
with somebody who is taking advantage of their power or
Mm-hmm.
their position or whatever it might be. And this can drive these fears to a level that makes it very difficult to function,
to live on a daily
basis, which, that's what phobias are. But this one in particular, I think is very common. And I think there's a lot of women who will relate to you putting your keys between your fingers and looking in the backseat of your car and always being hyper aware all the time because of that fear. And men, get with it, guys. Like, let's start to understand that that's something that goes on a regular basis with our female counterparts. This is something that they deal with on a daily basis that we don't totally understand, or most of us don't. Some of us may, but most of us don't get it, to that extent.
Most don't think about it
at all. Yeah, for sure. So if you're struggling with it, if it's something that's really difficult for you,
please seek some help. Get an assessment.
Seek out some help.
They'll know.
Definitely.
Go and get some help, and definitely probably not watch these movies, right? Because good grief.
Or maybe, I don't know. I mean,
the second one might be therapy.
There's some empowerment too.
Taking your power back.
Taking your power back a little bit. So yeah, that's a good transition into our movies. And it's really interesting. So I've been reading Men, Women, and Chainsaws, which is kind of it's kind of a standard read for people who are really into horror movies. It's about gender in the more modern horror film. And I've heard a lot of people talking about it on podcasts over the years and all that kind of stuff. My friend Wayne let me borrow his copy recently and kind of started diving into it. And it was a really interesting read this week to kind of look at, and it's a lot of the stuff within the book is things that have been kind of, they're coming out in horror. Horror is way more conscious about gender issues, about race issues, about all of these things
than we might think.
Than probably definitely than any other genre. I think horror is amazing when it comes to pointing these things out, and it has been for a long time. I mean, there's lots of stuff written about Night of the Living Dead and Last House on the Left, and how I Spit on Your Grave, and all of these movies that had messages that go way beyond the gore or the horror part of these things. Right? I
think that's why we're here.
Absolutely,
the message beyond the gore and horror.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, and that excites me because I find it really exciting to dig into the philosophical ideas, the social ideas, the political ideas, all those things that kind of mesh within these movies.
Well, honestly, before I met you, I never thought about horror as a genre that really had much depth.
Right.
So you've really...
I don't know that I thought that until probably the last, 10 years maybe.
As you kind of dive deeper and you see and learn everything that goes behind these movies, and you see the themes and what's emphasized throughout this particular culture.
Well, when we talked about, particularly with Fear of Men, we talked about the fact that, slasher movies, is that a good thing or a bad thing? The fact that we have these males predominantly that are almost always preying on females.
Right.
And that's something that comes up in this book too a lot. But that whole motif, right? The men have women issues, right? Norman Bates has mom issues. We have Jason Voorhees has mom issues. We got Michael Myers, going after his sister. We've got Driller Killer going after, groups of sorority girls or whatever.
And we couldn't really...
Sorority House Massacre, all these things, right?
When we tried to narrow it down to a female slasher, we weren't aware of a female slasher, horror flick.
I didn't spend a lot of time looking into it, but I'm trying to
just off the top of your head.
If I had thought of anybody.
But if anybody can think of one, please let us know. That was something, and then we kind of trailed off into
it's a male-dominated subgenre for sure. I mean, there's no doubt about it, and there's something really interesting there. And there's an element of some of these that have a sense of female empowerment, right? We have the final girl, we have some of these things that pop up. But as we went into digging into these kind of movies, a couple of them stood out to me, and ones that I had immediately thought of when I was doing this, and when we came up with this, when we had this phobia as a topic. And so our honorable mention for today is what year did it come out? I gotta figure that out. It was 2007, I think. 2007 or 2000. No, actually it was earlier than that. It was 2005. But the 2005, it's really just an episode, but if you've watched this series at all, you know that these episodes are mini movies. I mean, they're little movies unto themselves. But so we're going to talk about today our honorable mention, Masters of Horror series, season 2, episode 7, The Screwfly Solution.
Innocence and bliss. Then woman arrived, temptress, and wrecked God's plan. As of this afternoon, we have 1,100 homicides. All of them women.
Male sexual urges are very closely linked with aggression. Now, somehow, someone has figured out a way to erase the distinction. This is a concerted attempt to exterminate the human race.
Bioterror.
We have to begin the immediate evacuation of the female population.
Clear the aisle. Everyone, please, stay in your seats. I need everyone to remain calm.
Daddy, I missed you so much.
It's you, Georgia. It's Amy.
Well, what are you waiting for?
So the Screwfly Solution, like I said, is one of this anthology. And honestly, if you're not familiar with Masters of Horror. You need to track it down because this Mick Garris put this whole thing together. If you have a Roku or one of those types of streaming deals, you can get it on Tubi, on the Tubi app, Tubi. I found it not too long ago because I didn't see it when they first came out. So I don't know, a couple years ago or something. I started watching this anthology, and it's brilliant. It aired on Showtime for 2 seasons from 2005 to 2007. Basically, every episode was its own unique mini movie directed by some freaking kick-ass amazing horror director. Mick Garris, back in like the early 2000s, got all these guys to go to dinner at a restaurant in Sherman Oaks. It was like John Carpenter and Larry Cohen and Don Coscarelli and Joe Dante and Guillermo del Toro.
Mick Garris is so cool.
Stuart Gordon, Toby Hooper, John Landis. But I mean, all these guys got together at one restaurant to have dinner together and just talk shop about horror. And that turned into
Masters of Horror.
This Masters of Horror series. And so, and it expanded to Cronenberg and Eli Roth and Dario Argento.
I love this series. I think
it really is great. I mean, I've seen, it's so worth checking out. I think it's all on DVD too, or Blu-ray.
It's sort of Black Mirror-y.
Yeah. I mean, well, it just depends. I mean, it depends on the episode. Every episode's different. There's ones that are more creature feature. There's ones that are more psychological. There's ones that are more. I haven't seen
most of season 2. This is the only one of season 2 that I've seen.
So it's really interesting the way they do it. And so this episode in particular really stuck out at me because it's literally like the whole episode is about men killing women, like men just turning on women. And so it's called the Screwfly Solution, and it was directed by Joe Dante, who did Gremlins,
Noise,
The Howling, and The Burbs, which I listened to that soundtrack today. That
That's a really
Metal
good
Kris
soundtrack.
gave me. It was awesome when I was reading. Men, Women, and Chainsaws.
We could really visualize Tom Hanks on a barbecue pit. Well.
Yeah, that was one part where I was like, "Hey, this is the barbecue pit. This is his dream where he's being roasted on an open fire." So, Joe Dante is amazing. And he directed this, and it was based off a short story. I cannot remember the name of the person who wrote the short story. Do you have it written down? But it's based on a short story from like the 70s, I believe. The late 70s. I think it was written in like 77 or 78. And it's basically, the quick synopsis is there's a terrifying rash of homicides, femicides, I guess, just because it was just women being killed. And involving normal male sexual urges transforming into violent rage. And then the scientists have to figure out why and how. And then one of the scientists ends up getting this, it turns into, basically it's a virus. And one of the scientists ends up contracting it.
Well, let's go back a second. The scientists specifically, they were scientists of etymology, bugs. Because they were entomology.
Yeah, etymology's words. Entomology's bugs. I always get those mixed up too.
But they were helping to eradicate the cane fly, which was a nuisance.
The screwfly.
The cane fly.
Oh, the cane fly.
But they did put I think that's what the screwfly, cane fly was based on, was the screwfly.
Gotcha.
Because that was an actual thing that they talked about in the beginning, was the screwfly. And this fly, it gets into the ears of farm animals, and it basically just lowers their sex drive, so they don't reproduce, and so they end up dying. And they stop mating, and they become useless. And so they had created this concoction. I'm sorry. You know what? I just got that all wrong. I'm sorry. I spoke way ahead of myself. So the cane flies would get in the ears and kill the animals. They were like super deadly, and they reproduced rapidly. So what the scientists did was created a serum that they could give to a few flies that made them not sexual, and so they stopped reproducing, and then the cane flies went away. So that's important, because that's kind of what we find out later.
It would be like if somebody was trying to eradicate mosquitoes and they were trying to figure out a way to make them not reproduce or not be able to whatever.
Right. And they
spread disease.
And they talk, throughout the beginning of the movie about how there's public executions for women violating Sharia law. Excuse me. Can't read my own handwriting. Like 150 of them that the grandmother who was working on this like super secret project of people dying.
There's a family. Jason Priestley is the boy. I think he's a boyfriend or dad. I guess he's the dad. He's the dad.
Yeah.
And he has a daughter that's like a preteen or a teenager, 14 maybe. And he is one of these scientists. And then the grandma, is she grandma? And then Elliot Gould is
either grandma or like a very close
friend. Maybe they're all coworkers. I can't quite.
She worked for the CDC.
Right. And so did the other two as well, didn't they? Or they were also working in fields, similar fields, scientific fields, studying these bugs.
Right.
Elliot Gould and Jason Priestley were working together, and then this other grandmother, older woman, was also working with the CDC or something like that. So ultimately what happened was this thing started spreading like a virus.
Right. And then at the same time, we see this weird uprising of this cult called the Sons of Adam.
Right. There's a religious component that all of a sudden kind of takes over as well. So as these guys are
it starts in Jacksonville, Florida in America.
Yeah. And so all these guys are surprise there. Leave it to Florida. But these guys, so all of a sudden we start seeing these women being killed in mass numbers across the globe
for no reason at all.
For no reason, and at the same time, there's a rise of kind of this kind of religious cult that kind of references Genesis and men being dominant over women, and Adam and Eve, and this kind of
women nurture, men destroy.
Yeah, and so we start seeing that kind of coming up too. So then we realize they realize Jason Priestley and Elliot Gould realize this thing is spreading super fucking fast.
It's starting really at the equator where it's nice and warm and stuff spreads fast usually, and it's working its way up north and down south.
And we start to see that it's kind of based on men get the sexual urge, but then the aggression. Then they also have an aggression takeover.
Instead of having like a sexual urge and then having that prefrontal
instead
cortex,
of getting horny, they get violent.
Right. And having that prefrontal cortex come in and, kind of regulate things. Instead, it goes immediately to like violence or extreme rage.
Rage, yeah. So they end up killing all the women.
Yeah.
And they're chasing. So Jason Priestley, the only solution to this, right, is they decide, Jason Priestley and Elliot Gould meet with the CDC and they say, hey, we need to chemically castrate every emergency responder. Okay. Because if not,
they're going to all go out there and start killing everybody that we're trying to save. And
they're going to get
infected.
They're going to get infected. So Elliot Gould becomes chemically castrated because he's an older guy, and Jason Priestley decides he doesn't need to.
Right.
And then he gets on a plane and shit goes
But it's bonkers.
Bad on the plane.
It's bonkers before he gets on the plane, because as he's getting his ticket, this thing has spread so much that they're now having non-male flights,
right,
where you can get on a non-male flight, going anywhere at the airport, or you could get on a male flight, a mixed flight, I think they called it. And on the mixed flight, one of the flight attendants was male, and he just snapped the neck of this like woman that was freaking the fuck out. And so that's a terrifying concept to me, because I know so many men that I cherish and that
they just suddenly turned on you.
And what if every sexual thought that they ever had about anyone turned them into a rage monster?
That would be, it's nuts. And that's the theme of so the movie ends up being, right, Jason Priestley ends up getting infected and telling his wife and daughter, you need to run away. Go to Canada. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
And they take off, and he says, go to my cabin, up in or whatever, or go somewhere, go to this safe space. They have this cabin up in Canada or something. And so the wife and daughter leave. Daughter's like, I don't know what's going on, blah, blah. And mom's like, we got to get the hell out of here. And they get up to the cabin, and Jason Priestley is waiting for them. He told her specifically, if you see me, you need to kill me.
You need to kill me, because I will not be trying to see you.
So he's trying to, and then in this cabin scenario, he's manipulating mom oh, honey, I'm fine. I'm good.
Castrate yourself, buddy.
Everything's good. I'm fine. Don't worry. Blah, blah. I'm good. We found a cure, and then daughter runs to him, and he hugs daughter, but then he reaches down and grabs her ass, and mom knows.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, that's not good. Dads don't grab their daughter's ass.
Yeah.
This is bad. And so then she shoots him in the knees, grabs the daughter, they leave, they get the hell out of Dodge. and daughter finds a way to go back to dad's cabin. And then we see mom come back. Daughter is implied that she's dead.
Yes.
And then she finishes off her husband. And then she has to
exist in this world where women are literally being executed and are now endangered, basically.
Yeah.
And she has to hide her face as a man.
She has to basically pretend she's a man.
And she goes into this convenience store to get medicine for the old guy, the grandpa, who was castrated because he was sick, right? And he had a cold. Elliot Gould.
I don't know if it's great. I think he was just a close friend.
Whatever.
Of the family.
And so she goes dressed as a man and kind of all bundled up so you can't really see her face. And there's a fucking titty pouch.
Yeah.
Like
there's a pouch made out of a nipple.
There's a nipple pouch.
Out of a boob.
There's a nipple pouch. I stopped this show.
So they've been killing women up there, apparently up in the sticks, and they've been also taking their body and turning them into this is some Ed Gein. This is some Ed Gein shit.
This
here.
is like a hunting thing for them. Like they were hunters.
Yeah, they're making like lampshades and purses.
Yeah, so he's
who
got
knows?
this
nipple
titty
belts.
pouch.
Ed Gein made a nipple belt.
Yeah. And I came up with 10 plays on words regarding this titty pouch.
Oh man, that's
Are
awesome.
you ready?
I am ready.
Are you ready? Okay. So he had a titty pouch. That was my first one. A nipsack.
Ooh, a nipsack.
A knocker pocket.
Knocker pocket.
A booby satchel. A chest receptacle or a cheseptacle. A sweater melon tote. A hooter handbag. Naughty pillow knapsack. A literal fun bag. Or an areola attaché. Thank you. I'm here all week. Woo!
I am very, very, very
I
proud
think
of your
knocker
list.
pocket was my favorite.
Knocker pocket is a good one. That is really
But
good.
it was a knocker pocket. It had the nipple on the bottom.
It was just a little.
He had like strung string
just a
through
little
it. Like I'm
nipple
gonna
sack.
just carry around, my nipple sack, my nip sack,
nipple knapsack.
my nip sack.
Nipsack.
But I found myself very proud.
What about a titty tote bag?
titty tote?
Was that on your list?
No, I had a sweater melon tote.
Titty tote or booby backpack?
Ooh, I didn't think of that.
It wasn't a backpack though. It was more of a
No,
Yeah.
It was definitely a sack.
Yeah.
Of some kind. But anyways,
I'm
best
proud of your
part
list.
of the whole movie, I paused it and then went onto my phone and there's synonyms for breast and synonyms for bag.
Oh,
and I just
man.
went after it and just laughed.
If you can think of
my
any
ass
better
off.
ones,
Yeah.
post them up on social media with
We will
hashtag what?
We will post a picture of the titty bag.
Hashtag nipsack.
And then we will post all of mine, and then you can have fun with it too, and you can tell us your favorite rendition.
So it ended. This movie ended. This movie ended really oddly with
So
some
weird.
like alien spiritual creatures, angels, maybe aliens. Not
They
sure.
call
which.
them angels. The hunters called them angels.
Angels, yeah.
And they're very enchanted by them.
Yeah.
And like the little boy comes back into the hunter shop and he's like, I saw the angels.
Yeah.
Oh, blah, 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 blah. But really, I think they're aliens.
Something. Yeah,
And
I
they're
couldn't quite
very-
figure it out. It was an odd ending.
They're
but it gives
very
you kind of that like,
feminine.
yeah, very feminine, very
And
feminine.
And
And they were
have
sucking the brains
they
out
have
of
fucking
them.
laser hands, and they just like use their laser hands to like laser across these guys and like make them pass out. And then they screwed this like nub into their forehead that extracted all their frontal lobe juices. Is my theory.
Yeah.
We might want to tag the director and see if my theory is correct. That
Something like that. Yeah,
that the
for sure.
aliens were trying to get at the
And
increased levels of
they were using
testosterone
religion. They
or
were
something.
using this overt masculinity, this sexuality to get what they needed or wanted, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
And so
it's a great episode.
This race was basically on Earth and figured out a way to exterminate humans using each other.
Yeah.
It like was fucking mind blowing.
Yeah. And it's it was literally men versus women. Like there's no doubt about it.
Although if you look really closely, and I don't know if you noticed this when you were watching it, the alien angels are feeding the goodest of boy doggies while they're like sucking frontal lobe juices out.
They are?
Yep.
They're feeding the puppy?
The goodest of boys.
Oh yeah.
Which to me implies Adam and Eve, the garden animals,
Taking care of the animals.
tranquility.
Interesting.
So
There was definitely a lot of those kind of religious overtones and like and then also like
bioterrorism
and Islamophobia. There was
Oh
all
my
kinds of stuff that
gosh,
were
there
mixed
was-
into
yeah.
that.
And then there
It's
was
really
this
interesting.
this whole underlying fear of men in
Yeah,
general.
men in general.
Really,
which really comes out of that 90s kind of experience, right? Like you sent me a really interesting quote about the movie, or somebody had written about the movie. Let me see if I can find it because I want to read it. I thought it was really interesting.
Is your phone on airplane mode?
No, it just made the microphone fuzzy because when I turn my phone on, it does that. But let me see here. You said, I wish you had written it down. I wish I had written it down when you had sent it to me. Oh, here it is. The premise of this movie is a product of its time, written in an era where feminist authors were exploring separatism from society at large and often working from an assumption that men were fundamentally violent and women fundamentally peaceful. But when I read it, some 25 years later, those assumptions still permeated everything I was being told about gender. I'm not sure what my male counterparts heard during youth groups and talks with adults, but the standard message to girls was clear. You interact with men at your own peril because they just can't control themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The Screwfly Solution turns these glib justifications into a horror story. What if women's sexuality genuinely made men uncontrollable?
Yeah.
The result is horrifying for just about everyone. It's implied that killings proceed from a kind of hijacked version of normal human biology.
Mm-hmm.
And Screwfly mines the terror of being compelled by instinct to do something unconscionable for all it's worth.
Yeah.
Which I thought that was great. What a great little summation to make you
Fantastic
think
summary
about this movie.
Yeah, well, it was technically a summary of the
the book,
itself,
which makes
but
sense.
the book was very closely with this,
influenced.
So it tied in perfectly. I loved it. Like I was riveted.
So
it may have been the drugs from my foot, but I was very into it.
Well, we talked about that one for a bit here, which I thought was a really good tie into this phobia.
This next one.
And also, guys, I really want to promote Masters of Horror because I think it's badass.
It's brilliant.
And honestly, we need to try to get Mick Garris to get all those guys together to do an updated series for like Shudder or something. It would be phenomenal.
Yes. Next on Shudder.
God, I would love that. But we want to dive a little more into traditional kind of horror, the kind of feminine fear of men genres that have been traditionally kind of associated with horror.
Right.
So we are going to dive into our feature presentation.
And now our feature presentation.
Jennifer, stand with me, between my associates.
Hi.
Drive me completely crazy. So, tell me, what is it you don't like about love?
You're not my type, that's all.
Not your type?
Stop!
So our feature presentation is the 2017 movie, amazing flick, Revenge.
Yeah, which also, oddly enough, has an undertone of anger related to sexual stuff as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So Revenge is a 2017. It's a French film, rape and revenge action horror film, written and directed by Coralie Fargeat, I believe is how you pronounce her name.
It's French.
Coralie Fargeat. And starring Matilda Lutz, who's phenomenal in this movie. Kevin Janssens, Vincent Colombe, and Guillermo Bouchide.
I love to watch you try.
I think I was close. Bouchide. I bet it's Bouchade. The plot follows a young woman who is assaulted and left for dead in the desert by 3 men, where she recovers and seeks vengeance upon her attackers. So it's a rape revenge film, and that rape revenge genre is something that's been talked about a lot from a gender perspective, from a horror perspective. What, are they exploitative?
Right.
I Spit on Your Grave spends, which is probably the most famous of the classic kind of rape revenge movies, spends a lot of time kind of focusing on the rape. It's brutal. It's gnarly. It's not something that, if you're taking sexual satisfaction in it, you need to go seek some help. I think on last podcast on the left, they go, if this gives you a boner, then you need to go get some help.
Seek help immediately.
So that's the I Spit on Your Grave, though, a little more exploitative, has a lot more, but similar concepts, right? Like the concept of this traumatic, horrible experience, this rape experience. And then the female character then seeking revenge.
Right. And how we kind of wove this in with the fear of men is that it's often these types of traumatic experiences that can pave the way for such a phobia to occur, or to develop over time. This really intense trauma. I mean, so basically in this movie, she's having an affair, or he's having an affair with this cute little blonde girl and this cute
socialite, right?
Yeah.
He's obviously very wealthy.
He's very wealthy.
Flying into this retreat
or
this little place out in the middle of the desert.
A couple of his buddies come out too, and one is kind of like you automatically get that creepy feeling from him, and the other one is kind of just the laid back, like kind of in the shadow one.
Kind of dopey, but maybe he's nice. You can't quite tell.
Like, you can't really tell, yeah. And they get a little lit one night, and the aggressive one misreads her spunky little attitude as, an invitation or as a come on. And then while her boyfriend is away the next morning, right?
Yeah. They wake up and they're all hungover, and the dopey guy is passed out in the pool.
And this guy is left alone with her and her white knight, the guy who wants to leave his wife and his family for her.
Right. The wealthy guy, her wealthy boyfriend is gone. He's gone. He's gone to go get some hunting permits for him and his buddies to go hunting.
And this come on turns into more of a, no, you acted like you like me, so you're going to give this to me.
That's Stan. So Stan and Dimitri are the two guys.
I'm going to call him the aggressor.
Yeah, the aggressor. Stan is the aggressor.
And
Richard is the boyfriend. So
no, he's the white knight.
He's the white knight.
White knight, passive dude, and the
Dick.
aggressor.
His name's Dick.
White knight.
And then we have Dimitri, who's the dopey dude.
Right. And so that happens. And then, of course, White Knight comes back and finds out.
She's been raped.
Yeah,
she's been raped by Stan.
The creepiest part was that, like, the passive dude walks in and he's like eating some sort of a candy out of a bag.
Some marshmallow
just kind of
chocolate.
like stares. And then we get an up close, like, of him just masticating and this like chocolate bar.
Good
I don't
word.
know. And
masticating his chocolate bar.
And
while she's getting ready to be raped.
Yeah. Almost
and the guy says, hey, either join in or get the hell out.
Yeah.
Right.
And he just stands there awkwardly for a little while longer. Not really, like, maybe I'll just stand here and jerk it. I don't know. And then he kind of slowly walks out, and then he goes and turns up the TV and just kind of goes about his business. While all of these sounds are coming out of the room, and he turns the TV
way up, and then
he
goes
basically
out to the pool.
just passively ignores
it, just whatever,
which is just as wrong.
Oh, big time.
Like, that he knows this is going on, and he is just kind of ignoring it. Then the White Knight comes home, gets mad at the aggressor, goes in there and initially
the rapist. I don't like the aggressor. The aggressor's
the
not
rapist.
a good. That's not a good. That's not a good name for him, because he's more than just the aggressor.
He's the rapist.
He's the rapist.
The rapist.
So he's not the therapist for 500.
And he goes
is the
in
rapist.
and he tries initially to
That was my
console.
Jeopardy joke. He didn't.
Sorry, say it
He's
again.
not the therapist for 500. He's the rapist.
The rapist for 500.
Yeah, Sean. I'll take the rapist.
The rapist for 500. I love your Sean
please.
Connery. Ooh. So then the White Knight.
We're laughing about the rape scene. That's not good.
No, we're not laughing about the rape scene. We're laughing about the fact that therapist also was the rapist on SNL. It's totally different.
True story.
So White Knight goes in, tries to console her initially. She really wants to leave. She's obviously having a traumatic reaction. She's been through something very horrible. And she threatens basically to tell his family and his wife about the affair. And he goes from White Knight to fight or flight instantly. Backhands her,
puts her on the
up
ground.
her lip. That his butt chin
Fun times are over.
His butt chin got so butt hurt by that.
His butt chin. There was a lot of butt chins in this.
So many butt chins.
Everybody
and butt
had butt
noses. Like weird. So yeah. Then she runs away. Like you do. And
yeah, he had offered her money. He had offered her kind of like, oh, don't worry, but we'll make this go away. Don't worry. And she was
I got
like,
you a
fuck
job.
no. This isn't, I'm not cool. This is not cool. This is, this is super fucked up. You're not going to make this go away with your money or your whatever.
Bribes, whatever.
And then she takes off because she realizes she's not in a safe place anymore.
No.
She takes off running through the desert.
They came in by helicopter because they're in the middle of the freaking desert.
Right.
So she just starts running
God, talk about the ultimate
desert.
fear. I mean, if you have this fear and you're just surrounded by these predatory men.
And you're trapped. And you've already been violated by one of them. And another one has just explicitly made you feel unsafe again.
Just smacked you across the room.
And then the other one already made you feel, you don't feel safe around him because he just walked out on it all. So ain't nobody going to help you.
Yeah. So she takes off. She's heading out of the desert or heading through the desert, running, and they take off after her.
Gets to a cliff.
And
they surround her.
Yeah. And Dick the White Knight
pushes her off a cliff.
He gives her a speech. He's kind of consoling her, like, hey, hold up, just wait. I'll get the helicopter here. 30 minutes, blah blah blah.
And she's like, no.
And then just pushes her off the side of the cliff.
Yeah.
And she lands and skewers herself on a tree below.
She gets impaled on a tree, and then they just leave her.
I gotta say, by the way, like as a film, this thing it's a beautiful film. It's gory. It's gory. It has a lot of very gory parts, but man, it is really, really well done.
It's very well shot.
It's beautiful. It has some, even the gory parts are
There
beautiful.
was a lot of emphasis on the apple that she bit into, which obviously is
right.
Like
an Adam and Eve,
apple,
right.
Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve metaphor again,
but then
which we saw in the last one too, that
but
male,
then there was also ants,
female.
Like this colony of ants that kind of showed up everywhere. Like they were gnawing on her body when she got skewered.
Right.
They were in the house on the apple. I still haven't figured out what the ants are about, but so she's skewered on this thing and there's an immense amount of blood. And I've already had discussions with Drew about how you have to suspend reality a little bit with this movie.
Oh, we had to I told you that. I told you that before we started because I said there's no way she would have gotten off that tree and done all the things she did. But there's definitely some suspension of reality
than 5 liters of blood in this scene. So
yeah, the bodies bleed. It's Evil Dead style.
But then she sees her lighter that had fallen out of her pocket, and she uses her headphones to lasso it, and then she brings it over, and then she reaches behind her and she feels like some brush, and she puts the brush at the base of the tree so that the tree will break and she'll fall off of it after it's been lit on fire.
Right. So she falls off.
Tree.
She works her way she ends up finding the Dimitri, the kind of dopey dude, right? After she gets off, she's still bleeding. She gets in the water, and Kris is worried about sepsis again, which is
sepsis. Seriously, she went under that water. She's
just so scared of
this
bacteria.
This woman has an active,
a huge wound that went all the way through her.
Wound all the way through her, and she's jumping in this river in God knows where.
I don't think that's what we're supposed to emphasize. I think we're supposed to emphasize her badassness, getting up and just fucking going for it, right? She's just
fucking
going.
Tore after it.
She is surviving right now, and she runs across.
They follow her trail of blood.
Yeah, she runs across so they're out. They're like, oh shit, where did she go? She's not on the tree. We got to go find her.
She runs across the dopey one, and the dopey one she almost gets a shot off on him.
And the gun doesn't have any bullets in it. He's like, I'm not that fucking stupid. And then he starts to drown her in the water.
Well, no, first he gives this elongated speech about how I'm not as dopey as you thought. You thought I was stupid, but really, I'm just the kind of hunter that waits for the prey to come to it. Blah blah, freaking blah.
And then they go and he grabs her. He starts putting her under the water.
I'm so fucking glad she stabs him in the eye.
And then
right
she
here.
reaches. She's got a knife, and she grabs his knife,
stabs him in the eye,
grabs his knife, and stabs him right in the eyeball.
Yeah, like not like a knife. This is a knife.
It's a knife.
This is a knife.
This is definitely
this thing goes all the way through.
This is a Crocodile Dundee knife.
Yeah, that thing severs, his
it's in his brain.
Stuff in his brain that are for basic functionings. Like, yeah.
Yeah. He's gone. So one down, 2 to go.
And he floats in the river away.
1 down, 2 to go. But now she realizes I'm pretty fucked up. I need to deal with my gaping wound.
Hold on. In the meantime, now the rapist is like, oh, let's find her and say it was an accident. Let's, maybe we could find her and just say it's an accident. Like, I'm going to go back on it. And the White Knight is totally satisfied that he's going to fix this problem.
He's going to figure it out, right? He's going to find her. He's going to figure it out. But she's right now, she's in survival mode. So she just goes, she finds a cave or something, and she's
impaled, lost in the desert with just this bag from the guy that she killed that has a Mexican beer in it. And she starts a fire, and then she has, I forgot this weird little nugget.
She figured out a way. She figured out a way to create a way to cauterize her wound.
But she has peyote in her little locket because he gave it to her.
Oh, that's right, peyote earlier, right? So she takes the peyote.
Yeah, and then fucking trips balls. And while she's tripping balls, she's cauterizing the wound with this piece of tin.
And brands this badass eagle across her wound.
Also wouldn't happen because the eagle wasn't raised.
You don't know that it wasn't raised?
It wasn't raised.
Could have been. There's things embossed on the side of beer cans sometimes. Who knows?
No, it was just little things.
You don't know.
Little things, people.
Suspend reality. Don't worry about those little details. She's badass. She just badass cauterized her wounds with this, and now has a kick-ass eagle brand.
And she's
ready to go kick some ass.
This peyote party, and now she is ready for revenge.
She's ready to go. She's going to go kick some ass. So, ultimately, let's wrap this up a little bit here and just kind of give a conclusion, because if you watch it, you're going to see this whole badass scene take place. But she ends up tracking down the rapist, and they have this long battle back and forth in this scene, and then she goes and finds White Knight guy in his house. And they have this badass back and forth scene.
Way too much blood.
And ultimately ends up killing them both. And then we hear the helicopter at the end show up to show that she's, might be okay and get taken back and be
But not
rescued.
Only did she survive, she got revenge.
She got her revenge, right? So that's the rape. That's the rape revenge scenario, right? So I wanted us to hurry up through that real quick so we could get to kind of what you felt about this movie. Like, what do you feel? Like, I don't think you've seen a lot of these rape revenge type movies. I've seen a bunch of them. How did you feel about this movie? Like, did you get that like, yeah, fuck yeah feeling?
Well, there were so many times in the movie when she was alone and vulnerable. And I kept thinking alone and vulnerable. She's on a fucking tree limb, alone and vulnerable in the middle of the desert and God knows where. She's in the house alone and vulnerable. And she took alone and vulnerable and dealt with it, and then faced these guys straight down. I think that is really difficult to do after so much physical and mental trauma. So again, suspend belief.
Sure. But it's part of the concept is that she took the power back, right?
Right. She was, this ditzy blonde, whatever, that was very over sexualized. And she liked that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then she got taken advantage of, and instead of becoming a victim, she became a warrior, and took her power back from this very awful, powerless feeling experience. It sucks all your power out of you when you get violated like that. And she took her power back in the best way she knew how in this movie, which was kicking some fucking ass.
Yeah. Which I think is, I mean, what like movies, I've seen this, you know, you've seen this trend in horror movies where, you know, these women are they're being stalked or they're being raped or they've been raped or whatever. And then they take the power back to a certain extent, but there's still always this kind of, in some of the slasher movies, they still feel kind of weak even at the end. Right.
They always trip and fall. Right. Which she did slip and fall in the blood.
But she ultimately, like, she was the one stalking her prey.
Right.
By the end. And that's I Spit on Your Grave too. Like there's these,
the hunted
and Irreversible. That's another movie with Monica Bellucci. That's a Gaspar Noé movie that is another, you know, kind of rape revenge that has like a 10-minute long rape scene that is just brutal, which I'm really glad that this movie did not.
It didn't focus on
the rape itself.
It focused on the response to the rape.
Right. It really didn't. It in no way glorified or sensationalized or you know, any of those things.
But it took some very real things into account, like people that ignore rape happening.
Absolutely.
People that are just as responsible. People that knew a rape happened and try to cover it up. You know, those people are just as responsible as the person who did the rape.
Absolutely. And that tendency that, you know, her boyfriend guy, the tendency to be like, oh, it's not that big a deal. Oh, it's no big, it's not,
felt
so,
justified.
Just get over it. Whatever. We'll figure it out.
He felt justified because he was rich.
She was just an object to her
and
anyway.
She was an object and he was very wealthy and he had a family. And they were planning I think it was a wedding.
Yeah,
they were planning.
He didn't care.
And he didn't want to mess that up.
No, he wasn't going to let it get in the way.
So her life wasn't worth messing that up. And that's that narcissistic psychopathy that we see in that guy who just killed his wife and daughters so brutally. Watts.
Yeah, the one up in Colorado.
Watts.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, absolutely. That is kind of that mentality, right? Like you know, if I can't have you, nobody can have you, or
psychopathy.
I'm not going to let you take my kids, even though I'm cheating on you. You know, that kind of, you know, and you
or
see
I
that.
Want what I want, and if that's what I have to do, then sorry.
So he did wrap his body in Saran wrap, which was, you know,
also suspending disbelief, as though they're not all bleeding internally here for hours.
Because I said, well, that helps. That helps keeps your insides in. And fresh. Which we both cracked up when we were watching the movie.
Let's
keep your insides in and fresh. So that is Revenge. It got a lot of critical acclaim. It was a really well-received movie. You know, it's a hard watch. All those movies are kind of hard watches. And I know for you, those are always tough, but it wasn't like Martyrs. It has a little bit more.
It has a little more tact.
It's a little bit, well, I don't know about tact, but it's a little bit, I think because it does suspend disbelief a little bit, you can absorb it a little bit easier.
Right.
You know, it's not quite so straightforward and just brutal. It has a little bit of, a little bit of action adventure.
I get where you're going at here. Yeah. It's almost less horror and more action adventure.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. But I mean, it's very gory. So do you want to go get that buzzer real quick?
Yeah.
And I'll talk about our next episode.
Do it.
So she has food in the oven and it just started beeping. She has chicken and potatoes in the oven. Cause we're going to eat some delicious dinner as soon as we're done with this podcast. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. You know, it was a tough one to research because there's so many ways you can go with it. But I think in horror, you know, I really, if you're interested in these concepts of gender and horror movies, there is so much good stuff out there. There's great articles on all of the Bloody Disgusting and, you know, on Dread Central. And there's some great documentaries. Wow, your boot really is really loud.
I know, I'm sorry.
Your pirate peg leg boot.
That's my peg leg. Thank you.
But there's a lot of great ways to kind of interact with this topic and the genders in horror movie kind of stuff. And there's so many different nuances to it. Check out Men, Women, and Chainsaws by Carol Clover. Excellent book that really dives deep into this stuff. And there's been other books written about the topic as well. But we hope you enjoyed this episode. This one was Androphobia. But next episode, in honor of St. Patty's Day, since we talked about that being a holiday that I like to enjoy, and in honor of St. Patty's Day and all those British hating Irish out there, we're going to do Anglophobia, which is the fear of England.
Fear of England.
I think that would be kind of fun. It's going to be our St. Patty's Day special, the fear of England.
It's going to be really interesting to
study. And maybe
on.
We'll even get it done early and release it on St. Patty's Day.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That'd be kind of fun. Maybe we'll try to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, because
if not, it'll be 2 days after St. Patty's Day, and people will be like, "I'm already hungover." It won't be nearly as topical, but that's what we're going to do next time. Anglophobia. If you have anything that you think movies or whatever that you want to contribute to that you think we should cover, or anything specifically, historical, phobia related, any of that stuff, let us know. But until next time,
stay afraid. Stay very afraid.